And this meeting is being there you go. So just so everybody knows, the meeting's being recorded. And first of all, thank you, Aubrey, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, guys.
So this is a special event just for you guys who are graduating. It is a gift from UGF TV to you as you venture into the world in very unique and unusual circumstances. We're so glad that Aubrey can be with us for an hour to talk about her film, her incredible film that is also a gift of an advanced screening to all you guys, and I know many of you have seen it. And then how she has proceeded using that which UGF TV has taught her as she's gone forward. I'm Janet Grillo. Many of you know me, many of you don't. I teach classes here at UGF TV in producing, production, and also writing. And a couple of the ground rules. We're going to have a chat. Aubrey and I are going to talk. While we do, please everybody mute your voice. Stay on mute. And then afterwards, we'll talk for about half an hour. And then for the second half an hour, it's going to be a Q&A. And at that point, the way that you can get your questions is down below. You see the participant link. On the participant link, you can push raise your hand. And then we'll call on you, and we have some help from the wonderful staff, UGF TV staff, in terms of helping to identify questions. And it's kind of like if we were in a room, you'd be lining up in front of a microphone. And at that point, then you'll unmute and ask your question. You can talk to Aubrey about the question. I think that's covering the ground rules. Okay, so many of you know Aubrey already, but you might not know a few things about her, such as, besides being one of our most distinguished and celebrated and brilliantly talented alumni, she graduated 14 and a half years ago.
Ah.
Yeah, well, you've been busy since then.
Yeah.
And while at UGF TV, Aubrey chose to do something incredibly cool that I'm so impressed by. She spent her semester abroad in Ghana, which maybe we'll have a chance to get into. And of course, you guys know her from Parks and Rec and Legion, which is an incredibly complex role. Yeah. There's time to talk about that. But also, importantly, Aubrey has been producing. She's produced a bunch of Sundance premiering independent feature films.
I'm moving not too far.
Can everybody go on mute? Great. So Aubrey's produced, many award-winning, acclaimed Sundance premiering independent films, including Life After Beth, Little Hours, Ingrid Goes West, which then went on to win an Independent Spirit Award for Best First Feature and be nominated for Best First Screenplay. Also, you're really brilliant in it. It's an incredible film. Aubrey's also hosted the Spirit Awards twice in extremely memorable ways. And most recently, she produced and starred in a tour de force role, an extraordinary film, Black Bear, that also premiered at Sundance. And so let's start there. Let's jump in with that film. Yes. And the origin story. So it's written and directed by Lawrence Michael Levine, who also is a UGF TV.
Larry.
What?
I said I call him Larry.
We'll call him Larry. Okay. So he's also, we just learned, an alumnus. And so how did it happen? You guys did one episode of a TV show together. Tell us how it all came together.
Well, Larry has made several other films before. He's not a first timer. He made a movie called Wild Canaries a couple years ago that I believe premiered at South by Southwest. And we had Alia Shawkat was in that movie, who's a good friend of mine. And so we kind of like run in the same circles. And Larry's, was very kind of involved in, I guess, the mumblecore, American independent cinema movement. I don't know if that's what they're calling it now, but he was kind of there, working with a lot of those filmmakers. And so I met him through that kind of network of filmmakers, probably a lot of them NYUers. And yeah, Joe Swanberg cast me and Larry in his TV show Easy. as a married couple, which was just, it's a Netflix comedy show. It's kind of an anthology where every episode is different and they're all kind of like little stories. And so Larry and I got to know each other as actors, and we played a married couple. And we are in real life both partnered with filmmakers as well. So Larry is married to Sophia Takal, who's an actress, filmmaker. She most recently directed Black Christmas, which came out a couple months ago, and I'm with my partner Jeff Baina, who I've produced some of his films and starred in some of his films, and so both of us had that kind of experience that we talked a lot about in those 5 days when we were shooting in Chicago. And I didn't know Larry was going to write the script. It just kind of, we had a deep connection. We kind of talked about a bunch of things, and then a couple months later he came back to me and said, "You want to get coffee? I wrote something," and just slid it across the table. And I was like, "Wow, Larry, what a script." What a terrifying idea.
Wow. So was the script that you read at that point close to what you ended up making? How much development went on and how involved were you in shaping it?
Yeah, it was pretty developed. I mean, I think that the one of the things that I love about Larry is just his writing style. And when I first read the script, it read to me almost like a play. Some of these scenes, I think the dinner sequence in the first half of the film is almost 15 pages long or something, like somewhere between 10 to 15 pages long, which is a really long scene. And and so it's Larry is very particular about dialogue, and so it was pretty close to what we shot. I think there was some development, there was some kind of early on kind of talks about just like um yeah, just the tone of it. And I was really kind of gravitating towards the idea of of kind of pushing it into a darker kind of, not horror, but kind of pushing the like almost like psychological thriller kind of aspects of it. So we had some discussions about that, and I believe he maybe wrote a couple different, next drafts or whatever, but nothing was like totally different. The core of the script that he gave me remained the same when we shot it, pretty much.
So how did you decide to produce it? And what exactly was your role? I mean, one of the things that's great about this conversation is this is part of a series of conversations about craft, right? So
Yes.
I know everybody really wants to know in the weeds how this happened. How did you get involved? Because obviously you're going to star in it. What made you decide you also want to take it on as a producer? And what was your role specifically as you did?
Yes. Well, I think because, Ingrid, I have a producing credit on The Little Hours, and that was like my first real producing credit in film. And I think Ingrid Goes West, though, was really the first experience that I had where I really like, I was involved in every single decision making, step, and just from the very, very beginning to the very, very end. So I got to kind of like really experience that in a way that really opened my eyes, and I realized like, oh wow, it's hard. It's almost hard to go backwards once you're involved on that level. It's like you know too much or something, and I think like that whole process just like set my brain on fire, and I was like, oh, well, it's hard for me to ignore. I think for me it's like, I don't need to produce every single thing that I act in. It's more like it just depends on the project, I guess. And for this film, I think because the it's just a very specific movie that where I felt like this was the kind of movie that I wanted to make sure that I was very, very much involved in how it gets made, because it was a challenge for me. It was terrifying for me. And I think there's as a filmmaker, it's like I care about things like the way the movie's shot, and things like that. And so I think it was natural. I think for Larry and I to kind of like go on that journey together, it just made sense for me to come on as a producer at an early stage, so we could decide, like, you know, what kind of environment are we going to have and who are we going to bring on to this team. And you know, so it was a collaborative process from the beginning. And I think, you know, just like practically, it's like, you know, um, I have a lot of ideas about the cast, and I have a lot of, you know, things like that. So I wanted to make sure that I was feeling, you know, that my opinion mattered, I guess, through, you know.
Right. It sounds like the partnership was integral to feeling safe into going into such deep water, because this is enormously challenging. And I think you're very brave to do it. When you said that you were terrified, I can only imagine what you're
Yeah.
being asked to do.
Yeah, well, I think that this movie, like, you know, this is an art film. I mean, I felt like, yeah, like I knew we weren't gonna be able to have a huge budget to do this, and it's a smaller, kind of more intimate movie. But for me, like, I'm interested in the craft, you know, of the film process, and I'm less interested in just, you know, having a camera and just kind of capturing things shaky, kind of verite style, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I think there's a time and a place for that too, but like, I was interested in the idea of like shooting something that was written like a play, but in a very deliberate
Mhm.
way. So we had a lot of talks about that early on.
Oh, yeah, well, that's very interesting. I'd like to explore that a little bit more, because that's one of the things that really jumped out at me, was how deliberate the choices were. The looks are really different in the different section. I mean, it was really clear. It was clearly planned. So in the second part, the kind of, that's sort of Truffaut influenced, if you will, the sort of day for night part, where the
Mhm.
camera's doing all the kinds of pans and swishes and stuff, that is not by accident. So how did you guys start a conversation about the shooting style and the cast? What were the next steps there?
Well, I mean, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted, and in terms of of how it would be shot, and in terms of the cast. I wanted Christopher Abbott. He was someone that came to mind for me as someone that could handle the subject, you know, matter, and handle the material in a way that, like, that I felt would make me feel safe and comfortable, and like, you know, I'm working with someone that I really trust. I just had an instinct about him, even though I never worked with him before, but I'd seen some of his work, and I felt like, he was just so great. And Sarah was also an idea that Larry had brought, that I thought was a brilliant idea, and I think she's amazing too. And so we kind of talked about that, and then visually, I guess Larry definitely had ideas about, yeah, about kind of contrasting those two sections, because I think the
Mhm.
thing about the script is it's very up for interpretation, and you can ultimately kind of like, you know, you could take that script and give it to 10 different people, and you would have just, I mean, with every movie you'd have it a different movie, but this one is really, in particular, just, you have to make these like choices going into it, because it's not a linear kind of storytelling. It's, there's something else happening. So so I think there was always kind of the idea to shoot the first half, to shoot the first part of the movie, in a more kind of like deliberate way, you know, not kind of, uh, you know, a little less free than in the second half, where it would just become kind of chaotic and hectic. And I think we almost wanted the, yeah, it's a really like trippy conversation to have, because it's like, we almost wanted like the first half to be like the movie, but
Uh-huh.
but
Uh-huh.
to feel
Yeah.
but to feel more real, whereas like the second half is almost like more arched, but we wanted that to feel more real visually, if that makes any sense. So it's
It
like,
does. It makes total sense, because I found myself wondering as I was watching it, which is the actual movie? And so that, I think that worked incredibly well. So there you are. How did you get Christopher Abbott involved? Because you hadn't worked with him, you knew him casually. He's so brilliant, and you guys work so well together. Can you talk about that process a little bit?
yeah, I think Larry just, well, you know, my agent helped out and just kind of reached out to him, but I had only met him one time socially, and I'd seen a movie that he was in, James White, and um, that to me was like some cosmic thing. I mean, Larry sent the script to him, and the producers, the other producers, I had worked with him on another film, which was a
Ah,
coincidence too. So they kind of knew him, and that was like kind of a that was like a really big sign for me because basically I didn't even reach out to Chris. I didn't know him at all, and they sent the script to him and sent a letter to him, and but then Larry sent me a message and was like, hey, just so you know, we sent the script to Chris, and maybe if you want to like send him a message or something just to kind of encourage him, like maybe you could.
right.
And I wrote this draft of a message that I was going to send to him that was basically like, I don't want to be like pushy here or anything like that, but blah blah blah. And then I looked at it and I was like, I'm just gonna like sleep on this and not send it because I just want like the universe to like just decide, And so I slept on it, which is not like me. I'm very impulsive. Like I don't even like think. I'm just like, bah! Um, but I, for some reason, was like, I'm just gonna play this one really cool, and so I didn't send the message, and then I woke up to Larry going like, whatever you did worked. He's in, and I was like, I didn't do anything. I was like, I straight up was like, universe, like take it.
Wow.
So
Yeah. But that's kind of incredible because I always feel like making any film is a minor miracle. All of the moving parts that have to come together. And a lot of it really is the forces of the universe, is that it's, if things align easily and quickly, you know that you're in the stream of it. Otherwise, it can take 10 years. And so, how long did it take actually from you reading the draft to you being on set?
not long at all. Not long at all. Probably maybe a year. I think maybe a year and a half or something like just yeah, not long. And the same thing
That's
happened with
pretty
Ingrid
fast.
Goes West too. I think there is something kind of like cosmic about filmmaking where it's like, it can be a really organic process and it's all about, putting the pieces together and not, forcing anything. Sometimes things just work out. But
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's so hard to know because there are so many stories of brilliant films that, oh, took 20 years and people kept them on the shelf and they never forgot. But in that way, it's also about forces aligning. Those projects that were around for 20 years, they sort of stopped and started until the cosmic forces aligned. So
Mhm.
this one certainly did. Okay, so there you are. You're getting your ideal cast together. You have an incredibly unusual, complex, challenging piece of material.
Yes.
Um, how much did it cost? And how did the money come together?
So this is more of a Larry question, but I'll try to answer as much as I can. Cost wise, it was around $1 million, under $1 million. Really, we always knew we weren't going to have any more than $1 million. So that was a challenge, but Larry got it done. He had connections with financiers that he had worked with before, I guess, and he kind of sent the script out with me attached to it, and people, we had interest, so it was great, but it was tough, and I wasn't like a super big part of that
Mhm.
process, but it came together very, very, very quickly. And so
Yeah.
the game really, like pre-production was really just a matter of like, I mean, I felt like this with Ingrid Goes West too, where it's like there's this like kind of period of time where you think you have the money and you think and you have to kind of just keep moving as if you do,
Right.
um, and then you will. And it's kind of like you just have to like keep pushing it and pushing it and keep putting the things in place, as if it's going to happen and just kind of like will it to come together. But it's very stressful.
Yeah, extremely stressful. And so this is, on one hand, exactly the kind of film that you imagine you can make for about 1 million. It's one location, right?
Uh-huh.
And and it's kind of a small crew. How many crew members were there? I mean, that's a tough question. I don't expect you to know off the top of your
I
head, but
don't, Julie, if Julie or Johnny are on the call, you guys feel free to jump in and tell and
yeah.
answer any of these questions. I would say, how many were on the crew? 30?
Yeah, that would be my guess. That would be, yeah, it said about 30. Right. Yeah, right. It would have to be about that.
Am I right? Oh, Johnny said about 30.
About,
Nailed it. Oh, he's muted. He can't talk. Johnny, sorry. This is
yeah.
my Zoom. No, please talk. I don't unmute him. I don't have the power to do it. Yeah, 30. It felt, honestly, it felt really like, I mean, it was like the craziest production I've ever been a part of. Like, we shot in the middle of nowhere. It reminded me of some color sync, movies that I AD'd.
AD.
You know, it was wild. And I'm sure you guys understand that.
Yeah, I mean, when we were chatting before, we both sort of commented, it kind of felt like an NYU film set, big. So, can
Uh-huh.
you talk a little bit like how did it remind you of NYU, and how did you apply? Where's the parallel and the correlation between, since we've got a bunch of NYU film students, of where the similarity lies, and then of course the difference? As
Well,
you remember, we're going back 14 and a half years, but as you remember.
I don't even remember what happened yesterday. Uh, I mean, I think that there's just when you're making when you're making a movie like that, and it really is about, telling the story and the art of what you're doing, and it's not a studio movie, it's not a movie being made for any other reason. It's like there's just a mentality that happens where it's like we are all in this together, we're all making these like sacrifices, we're all, dealing with these ridiculous conditions or whatever it is. It's like it's not about anything but that. And kind of, I think so there, I think maybe there's just kind of a similarity of just the culture on set and just the attitude or something, and just the kind of craftiness of it all, because you have to be really creative when you're dealing with the elements, or you're dealing with, things where you don't have any money. Really, that's the bottom line, is like when you don't have a lot of money, you're just I mean, Johnny ended up being our craft services. He was like literally just like making turkey sandwiches for the crew. I mean, we ate together, we slept together, we all were in the woods in the middle of nowhere because Larry chose this location that was like nowhere near anything functional. And it was a gorgeous location. And it's like the kind of decision that like only maniacs would make. But like, it's for the love of film, and I think that that's something I feel like that's special, at least about my
Yeah.
experience at NYU, is like, we were kind of diving off the deep end together as a crew always, because we wanted to, we cared about the art of it all, and less about the, whatever.
Right, it's true that nobody shows up for a paycheck. It's nobody's payday, showing up to do something special.
Yeah, I mean, it's work.
So did you all live together in the house? Can you explain a little bit about the setup?
So we were shooting on this property in upstate New York that was about a half an hour off the main road. So there was like no cell service. We were shooting on a lake house. Half the crew, the DP and Larry, both lived on the set in the main house that we were shooting in.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then a bunch of the crew lived on set in the house, which, as you can imagine, was totally insane, because you start to lose your mind when you don't go anywhere else and you're living where you're shooting.
Wow.
And then they had rented another property that was like about 10 minutes deeper into the woods, still no cell service, that felt kind of almost like a camping ground. And then half the crew lived there. And then the actors were kind of like scattered around in different rooms and whatever we could find to house people, really, because we were in a town called Long Lake, which was essentially like one up from just like a camping kind of ground. So, we had issues with our generators. We had to get a new generator because we didn't have one for the first like 2 weeks. And then when we got one, it was like every like couple hours we would have total blackout, and we were shooting mostly nights. So like, very early on into the production, I think it was like wardrobe or someone gave me one of those like miner lights, like the thing where you go in my dressing room. I've never been given I had a miner's light and a bear bell to like ward off actual bears. And so that was cool. But it was like literally, and then it was like the bugs were so bad that like I'd put on my light when the blackout was happening, then all the bugs would like start attacking me because I have a light, and it was like I was in a living nightmare.
Were you afraid of ticks? Of course,
Okay.
having a house upstairs, yeah, I'm like, the first thing is ticks.
Yeah, I was afraid of ticks. Oh, Johnny says the producers put those in my room. Okay, not okay. You, it was you, Johnny. Um, yes, I was afraid of ticks. Like the first week or two, actually. The first week that we were shooting, I think I had something on my neck or something, and I went into this lodge, the Long Lake like lodge or whatever, and literally the guy that was like the mayor of the town, or he used to be the mayor of the town, like just came up to me and started digging it out of my neck. I mean, we were like in the woods. It was so, it wasn't a tick though. It was
Thank
like a
God.
spider baby or something.
Oh, spider babies in your neck. Okay. All right. So how many days did you shoot up there in these conditions?
Okay, Johnny, how many days did we shoot? It was like 19. Okay, 19 scheduled, but we ended up shooting 21 days. Um, because yeah, we started off, I believe, with 5 day weeks, and then we started kind of doing additional shooting and reshooting an extra day on the weekend. So we started doing 6 day weeks in the middle of the shoot, which I've never done before either. Or maybe we only did it one time, I can't remember.
Um, so part of this is like with all student films is the flexibility of you're there, you get what you can because there's little chance that you're going to be able to resume. Whereas on bigger budget films, you can reassemble, you can do reshoots later. Whereas with a low budget film, quite like, and this is where I think that the NYU experience really prepares everybody to make these kinds of films because you have to deal with what you have and be very resourceful when you have it. You never know how you're going to reassemble. You know, the other thing that strikes me about this is there's a lot of conversation now of how are we going to proceed in pandemic to go into production. And one of the models, in fact, Blumhouse, I'm sure a lot of the guys who are listening know about Blumhouse, is stepping forward and they're going to go into production pretty soon. And the idea is to isolate everybody. It's a lower budget film for them, 6 million, right? Isolate everybody, keep everybody in one place, in one location, living together and limiting everybody's contact. This is kind of the model going forward that we could see for some time.
Hmm. I mean, I feel like independent films are gonna have a way better time at making movies than, Marvel. I mean, I don't know how they're gonna make movies. Like, this is our time. This is your time. You guys gotta just
Yeah,
get it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of the pandemic, now you have this brilliant film. It premieres at Sundance. You have a distributor. How are you guys gonna, what are the ideas for releasing it and promoting in a pandemic? And how, what would be the typical way? When you made this film, what was your expectation of how it would be released and how does that typically go?
Well, I guess my dream is always theatrical release because I want movies to be in theaters and I want people to watch them together, which I think is so important. It's just the communal viewing experience. So I think our dream was to get into Sundance and to sell it to a place that we could trust that would, get it in as many theaters as possible. And so we did go to Sundance, and it's a hard movie to sell, by the way, because it's very experimental, and it's not a commercial movie at all. So it was a little bit of you know, of a fear that like, oh, it's not going to be commercial enough to sell. But I think we ultimately did sell it, and we have sold it to E1, which is just distribution company that I guess is also goes by Momentum, or that's part of them. And the plan as of now is to release it in the fall, and I think that's probably the plan that we would have wanted.
Mhm.
I think to release in the fall, but I have no idea if that's going to happen, and I don't think anyone does. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think there was like, there was an idea of like, well, do we like shift gears and do we like try to sell it to Netflix now, or do we try to sell it to
Mhm.
Amazon or something instead, or whatever? But like, I don't know. I don't think that. I think people are gonna go back to the theaters at some point. I think people need to go to the theater. I don't know. So I'm glad that we kind of like stayed on course. But and in terms of like how to promote it during the pandemic, I have no idea. It's probably going to be like me in my like computer. Like I don't even know what I'm going to be doing. It's like a whole new world. It's crazy.
It is such a new world. And actually today, both the Academy and the DGA have changed their rules for nominations. You no longer need a theatrical release to get nominated for Academy Award or DGA awards. And
Well, that's
usually, yeah, I think that makes sense. But this sort of points to a bigger conversation, a bigger question of theatrical altogether, which has become, while it's always important for films, become less of a factor with all films, and certainly independent films that are finding life and vitality through Netflix, et cetera. So, remains to be seen. So by the way, guys, please raise your hand if you've got questions. The way to do it is to go to participants, the participants link, click, and then click the hand raise. Okay, we got a couple of questions here. How am I going to find them? Luke Sallin, do you want a question or not? Let's see. Please, and oh, there's a bunch here. Okay, I see them now. Okay, Caitlin Bell. Caitlin Bell. Want to take yourself off mute? Let's hear it.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, if you did you start acting when you were at NYU, and since we're all graduating, like what did you do right when you graduated and in the months after that to start to sort of work in the industry?
So I like one of the reasons why I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to go to film school at NYU, and then I also wanted to do UCB comedy stuff at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. So like when I was in high school, like I became really obsessed with like sketch comedy and improv and stuff. So I was like, this is great. I'll go to NYU and like go to film school, and then at night I'll go to UCB and stuff. So I started doing that like the minute I moved to the city. I started taking classes there, like at night or on the weekends, and I was performing there. And then, but I didn't really like, I didn't like professionally act or anything until I was done school. But and I took like what is the class? Acting for directors? No, is that a class?
Yep, that's the class. Yep.
Or was it? Yeah. Or was it just regular acting? I don't know. Do you guys remember Marquetta Kimbrell? She's passed away, but she was like an acting teacher at undergrad at NYU, like film school for I don't know when, for a long time, but she was like really, really cool. I got to meet her and work with her. So I did take some acting classes at NYU, but I really was just doing like comedy stuff at night, and then just like trying to audition in the city when I wasn't in class. And then I kind of was at the beginning of like, in my class at NYU, Donald Glover, who's like now Childish Gambino. I know you all know. But his name was Donald, and so he was in my class, and we were really good friends. And he was like doing UCB stuff, like him and Dominic Dierkees and DC Pearson, like they were all at NYU, and so we were all like, kind of like doing like the beginnings of like web series and stuff. Like, they had like their sketch comedy group, and like all the sketch comedy groups were like doing like sketch videos and putting them online, which is so funny because now that SNL is doing like SNL at home or whatever, like they're basically doing like the videos that we used to do in like 2000 and whatever 7. Anyway, crazy. But so we were all like doing that kind of stuff. We were just basically doing comedy stuff. And then what did I do after I graduated? Well, so when I was at NYU, I got an internship at SNL. So I interned there in the design department for like the 2005 season, 2004, 2005 or whatever season. And that was just like an internship I got through school. But I made like contacts there and stuff. And so basically like right before I graduated. Also, I graduated early because I did, like Janet said, I did the this documentary program in Ghana, which knocked out a bunch of my credits because I was like, if I like do this program and then when I get back, I'll basically be done or something. So I somehow finished early, and I planned it so that I um, would work as a page at NBC, like right after I graduated. So after I was an intern at SNL, I got to know some of the pages and stuff in the 30 Rock building, and I was like, I should be a page, even though I didn't realize that that's like a demotion from being an intern. I realized that later, but but that's what I did. I think that was like my first job, as I was an NBC page. So I went through that, you know, process to get that job, which is like a whole thing. I don't know if any of you guys do that or have done that or whatever, but that's what I did right after. And then I just started kind of like focusing on acting stuff. But I think that's why I never made a color sync film. I never made like a thesis film because I kind of just like went on this other acting comedy track, I guess.
I'm going to jump in. There's some questions that people are actually writing in the chat box. So I think I'm going to go sort of back and forth between the chat box and the hand raising. And this is one that I'm kind of curious about too, which is, hey, Aubrey, can you tell us what's on the board in the background? And I got to say, love that you're doing what we tell students to do. Yes.
I was actually trying to hide the glare from my that is a script. That is actually, you know what that is? That's actually that's the first feature like film script that I've completed since I've graduated, and it's very embarrassing to say that it's been 14 years. God, it's that long.
That you wrote.
I wrote it with, great segue, my writing partner / producing partner, Dan Murphy, who is also an NYU film student, graduate. He was Tisch student council president when I was there, and he was my best friend. So he like appointed me as first lady, and so I was like going to all the events, even though I wasn't really doing any work, but I was like schmoozing with. I was like always like, where's the dean or whatever. But like I call him Murph, but Dan Murphy and I. Yeah, we're now writing partners, and so we wrote this script together, and we're starting our dream that was always, when we were started in film school, was to start our own production company. So we sold an animated show a couple months ago, and we finished this script, and we sold a book together that we're going to eventually make into a film.
Congratulations! Wow.
Yeah. So Murph and I are crushing the pandemic. I mean, just thriving. Not really, but this is our movie, and I'll tell you what it's called.
Yeah.
Grumpy Cat and the Halloween Curse. And if
Say it again.
anyone thinks that's stupid, I don't care. So basically, we have to convince Grumpy Cat. I don't know if Grumpy Cat is passed away. Grumpy Cat is a cat anyway, it's a long story. But I had to convince Grumpy Cat's agent to let me like try to sell this movie because it's basically like Hocus Pocus meets like a body swapping movie with me and a cat. It's gold.
Oh, so all right. This sounds wonderful. Will you direct it?
Yes, my dream is to direct this film and have this be my debut film.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive movie though. I'm going to need about $25 million.
Wow.
Not
wow.
Really. 10, 8. I have to make, Grumpy Cat has to be a puppet now. It's got to be like a Jim Henson thing. You guys understand.
Yeah, everybody here understands. Absolutely. There's great animators coming out of NYU too. They can all work on it with you.
But this process is very helpful. These cards are helpful. It took me 10 years to commit to that. But.
Yeah. So we got lots of questions here. People are loving your pitch, by the way. You've got a big fan base.
My audience. I need this.
Yeah. Everybody says that everybody's on board. You got your audience. And if you want crew, no problem. You've got lots of people.
God. I should make a deal with NYU to do a Grumpy Cat movie. All right, we'll figure this out.
We could actually figure, okay, we'll talk afterwards. There may be a way. Okay, so Lane Elliott has a question. I'm going to go back and forth between hand raising and chat. Lane Elliott, where are you? Reveal yourself.
Hi, because I'm here. Yeah, I wanted to know when you look at projects, especially like independent projects or ones that you're not involved in from the get-go with like the creative side of it, when you're just looking as an actor, what makes a project stand out to you, especially coming from like a film that is not like it's gonna make you a lot of money, like those.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, I feel like I'm kind of snobby when I read stuff, so most things that I read, I'm like, I I think it's like, I mean, if I had to like break down what I respond to in a script, I think it's always like if there's like I guess it's just the story. Like if it's like something that something that is, if it's a story that like I feel like is meaningful to me as a person, and it's something that I want to like give my like life energy to, like then I'm always interested in it. And but then I think just practically spaced, like a combination of, I mean, I always want to work with brilliant directors, and I think like one of the things that I think is always kind of interesting as when you're an actor and you're not someone that is, like a Jennifer Lawrence or someone like that who can just like be like, you what, maybe she can't, I don't know, that is my total like projection on.
No, she probably can actually. You're right.
Okay, you know what, she fucking can and she knows it. Okay. But I think like for me it's like, yeah, it's just about the combination, like it's about the collaboration. And I think just script wise, story wise, like always I gravitate towards like just beautiful stories and characters. I love characters, and as an actor I'm always just like, is this something that like I've never done before? Or like, like doing like Child's Play, which is like, a remake of a classic like horror movie. It's like I never thought I was going to do anything like that. Like that was not like whatever, but I was like, I don't know, it'd be really interesting to like play a mom right now and like have a child, and so things like that. But then also just in terms of like independent films that I'm doing, just to I don't really do things for money except sometimes. And and so I would say like if it's an independent film and it's like something that it's just the combination of people. It's like the director and if how I feel about them and how I feel their approach is, and I think about all parts of it. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's a question that's real interesting that kind of segues into choices. Kaylee says, I was reading on your Wikipedia page that your dad is from Puerto Rico. Mine is too. I was wondering if you've ever considered any Spanish language projects, or do you hope to in the future? And we can extrapolate to the larger question of Puerto Rican Spanish identity, Latina projects. Latinx, rather.
Latinx. Yes, my dad is Puerto Rican. My dad is not from Puerto Rico. He was born in Philadelphia. And unfortunately, I'm not fluent in Spanish. He's not either. Like my grandfather, who was born in Puerto Rico, who was like a police officer in Philadelphia when I was growing up, was just always very, he was always very like wanting everyone to speak English and that kind of thing. And so I'm not fluent in Spanish, which I'm working on. Because my dream would be to, first of all, be in a Spanish-speaking film. I mean, like, there's so many Spanish, like, I mean, Almodovar is like, I mean, if I could ever be in a movie, like, one of his movies, like, I would die. But I can't speak Spanish, so I need to work on that. But I would say, like, I'm definitely interested in finding a story that kind of speaks to that side of me, and kind of like, I've been developing a couple different things kind of along those lines, and like I think it's really, especially I think it's really really something that I want to do. I also want to shoot something in Puerto Rico eventually. Like I still have some family there. Um, I think that would be incredible too. But yeah, I would say like that's definitely something that's important to me is trying to find those kinds of stories to tell. Because I kind of have like a unique experience of kind of having like identifying with that, and then also, you know, I'm half, so it's kind of like that tension
Yeah.
between like how you identify and stuff.
That would be very cool. I actually think you should
So much.
your agent contact Almodovar and I think you'd be great, absolutely great match with him. Like, tell
Can't.
your agent.
I know, but I need to be fluent in Spanish.
Ah, okay. Well, soon enough. Okay, now here's another question from Katie. How did you land the role of April in Parks and Rec? And how does it compare to working on movies now? How, I guess, comparing being on a series, which also is another question that if we have time to talk about, how did you guys do the Parks and Rec reunion on Zoom? So there's 3 parts to this. How did you get the role?
Okay.
How does working on a TV series compare to working on a film? And then how'd you guys make the Parks and Rec reunion on Zoom?
Okay, so I the whole story of just like how I even got anything is so crazy. It's a long story, but the short version of it is like I was kind of plucked out of obscurity by Judd Apatow for Funny People, which was like this huge, which was really like my first big break movie. Before that, of course, I did Mystery Team with Donald Glover, who we know was in my class, and a bunch of those NYU. Anyway, but I got that Parks and Rec because I had flown out to LA because I was going through the process of getting Funny People, and the casting director, I didn't have like an agent at the time or anything. And the casting director who had sent in my tape just said to me, Allison Jones, who's like a genius, brilliant. She's probably cast most of like the really great comedy stuff in the past 10 years or whatever. She was like, hey, there's this like other project, and will you go and just have this general meeting with these guys? They created The Office or whatever. And I was like, okay, like I don't really know what that means, but okay. And so I didn't really know what the weight of that meeting, but I met them, and it was just a very weird meeting, and I guess I was being weird. I don't know what I was doing in the meeting, but I freaked him out or something, and then he like he wrote the part for me. So in the original pilot for Parks and Rec, it was my name. It was Aubrey, and then they changed it to April later because obviously they didn't want to use my real name. But so, and then I had to audition to play myself because NBC, like the network, didn't know who I was, so they like made me audition. But I was like, I'm auditioning to play myself. This is so weird. I hope I get it. And so then so then that's how I got Parks and Rec, just kind of on a fluke, and wasn't even trying to
Wow.
do that at that time, but I was so lucky. I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And then how did we shoot it? It was really weird. We did a table read. Mike Schur kind of emailed the cast and was like, we should do this for charity. What do you guys think? And everyone, you know, immediately said yes, and then like started shitting on Jerry because like that always happens like right away. It's like all of our email chains are just like making fun of Jim O'Hare. And then basically like our producer was like, here's how it's gonna work. Everyone's gonna get a kit sent to their house with a little rig. We're gonna with a phone. So they sent all like basically like a suitcase that looks super sketchy, like to everyone's house, and then it had like if there were any like essential props that you needed in your scene, it was in there. And it was basically just a Joby rig, like those like things with like the little like gorilla, like a gorilla Joby rig with like it's like a little like tripod and like has like a little light and a mic that goes into your phone. And then I guess the latest iPhone, it was like an iPhone like whatever. And then with a video, like a tutorial, it was like very like James Bond. It was like play the video and then destroy it and then like put this thing together. And so but everything was on us. And like I think I benefited from being a film student because my production design was the best, and I think my lighting scheme was the best. And but I
Actually.
I
Yeah.
didn't. I had to do it
Yeah.
myself. I had to do my hair and makeup. I didn't know what I was doing, but I think we all knew our characters so well that we were able to kind of get it together. We did location scouts through Zoom, so I would send pictures of my house and different things to the producers, and they would go like, "This would work, this doesn't." Um, and then when we actually shot it, it was like producer was on Zoom, director was on Zoom, script supervisor was on Zoom.
Huh.
We didn't have the luxury of improvising with each other as actors, so that kind of sucked. But we did a table read on Zoom.
Mhm.
So we did like a big table read so that everyone could kind of like get an idea of what other people were going to do. But then when we actually shot it, I was just reading lines with the director.
Right.
But so it was like kind of like a mind fuck because you had to kind of be like, okay, I'm gonna imagine like what Chris Pratt would like improvise to me, or like I'm gonna say something to him that like maybe he'll respond to later. And then when they would shoot with him, they'd be like, well, Aubrey said this and this and this, and so it's really just having that script supervisor is very important on doing a Zoom
Huh.
shoot because you're really just relying on the nuances of how you're doing things so that you can match it.
Huh. That's fascinating. They were midway through the spring semester, all the classes went remote at NYU, and there were a lot of production classes that went remote, especially sight and sound, and students did amazing work, and probably not awfully dissimilar to how you just described of figuring out how to.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a question from Samuel Leon. Samuel? You there?
Hi, thank you for being here.
Hi.
I'm just curious how you sort of like approach a script before day one of set and how you prepare for the role and break down a scene.
Um, well, it depends. I mean, so I've been working with an acting coach my whole life, like since Funny People. And so I've kind of set up like a process. Asking me as an actor, like how I approach the script or whatever?
Yeah.
So I have kind of like a process that I go through with her. Although I would say that for Black Bear, I did a slightly different kind of thing that I normally do. I tried something different out this summer, but yeah, I work with this woman, Ivana Chubbuck, who I've just always really just kind of worked really well with, and she knows me so well now too that it's like we have this like shorthand, but it's really just about kind of breaking down the arc of your character and kind of like knowing where you're starting and what you need and like why you're going on this journey and where you end up and kind of like allowing yourself to like have a transformation of sorts because that's what's always most interesting to me is kind of just working on kind of like the journey of like what you're doing rather than like trying to like play it a certain way or something like that. And so it's definitely that. But yeah, I don't know, it's hard. And then I think it just depends on too, if there's rehearsals and how other actors are, because I'm not someone that necessarily needs to go and have rehearsals all the time, but if someone wanted to, I would. And I'm interested in like having discussions, like kind of going through the script and talking about everything, all the moments, all the little moments, but not necessarily like blocking it out so that I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm going to do it, because I like to just let it feel real and kind of like instead of plan things to it.
So there's a kind of a segue question that came in the chat vis-a-vis what you were just talking about. Kylie Murphy says, I love Black Bear. Absolutely. Since it plays with these different narratives, I was wondering if you chose one objective reality for yourself to guide your performance.
One objective reality. No, I would say, I would say what was so different about that movie, working on that movie, was that like both stories and both characters were there was something very, very, very close about them and like that connected them, but then they were just like slightly kind of off from each other. And so kind of playing the subtlety of that was really weird. But I would say I had a good idea of what I felt like was kind of my objective in both halves. And then I would say that maybe there was like a mega objective for the entire thing, but that felt like it was almost a little more kind of abstract in like its kind of interpretation. Like for me, that like the one like there was, and I think like the way that Larry wrote the script specifically, and I think he talked about this at Sundance. He there was almost like a Jungian kind of quality to like both of these like vignettes, because it's kind of like two nightmares, like it's like your unconscious mind kind of like unraveling. It's like two nightmares and like kind of combined. And so I think there was a lot of things that I focused on with this movie that was really different than most. Like I allowed myself to go to a bit of a more abstract place, like the imagery of the bear, what the black bear was to me and what that symbolized to me was different in both halves, but overall the same. And there were moments where I felt like I am the bear, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then like
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's really cool. I'm just wondering, can we keep going? We're at 4:00. How much more time do you have? I don't want to,
I'm totally fine. We started late. Like we should. I'm fine. Whatever you guys
okay.
want.
Are we going to get kicked off, Kevin?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's keep going, and let's hope Zoom doesn't kick us off. And thank you. So Maddie Nouville, Maddie, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I think you're incredible, and I think you're awesome in Black Bear.
Thank you.
So I wanted to know if you prefer working on the more comedic stuff, or is it nice kind of being able to jump into different types of roles like you were in Black Bear?
I mean, I like both. Like, I think it's funny. Like sometimes, like I'll think that I'm like I kind of approach comedy and drama the same exact way. Like I broke down the script of Dirty Grandpa the same way that I did Black Bear. And to me that, that was real. De Niro was the love of my life, and no one was going to get in the way of that. So I don't approach things any differently, but what do I like better? I don't know. I like to torture myself. Whatever situation I can be in where I'm the most uncomfortable is always the best for me. But I would say I miss comedy. Like I think I was so spoiled with Parks and Rec. Like everyone was so funny. I mean, off camera, it was like just as funny, if not funnier than on camera, because everyone was so funny that now I'm like, I want to do comedy, but it's like, it just has to be funny. I don't know.
I love that you approach Grandpa the way that you did Black Bear. That's fabulous.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so here's another question from Diva Weiss. Hey, Aubrey, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what your writing process was like for the feature script that is behind you on the board. From the initial concept to actually cementing it into a script, what steps do you take?
I would love to answer this question about my dream passion project, Grumpy Cat 2 and the Halloween Curse. Wait, sorry, what was the question? How do I approach the writing process?
The steps.
So
the idea originally.
I guess, okay, so I would say my like impulsive like approach is like, I'm just gonna sit down and start writing. That never works out. I really benefited this time from outlining, like from really like making a treatment before I started actually writing it, because I always do that with writing where like I get ahead of myself and I'm like, I don't need to like follow the rules, and like I'm just gonna like write adaptation and it's just gonna come out just like that and it's just gonna be like that. And it never is. And so this one was, you know, a different kind of thing because I am the voice of Grumpy Cat, for those of you who don't know my career or Grumpy Cat's career, who was a famous Grumpy Cat is a famous internet meme that turned into an internet sensational cat. And Lifetime made a movie called The Grumpy Cat's Worst Christmas Ever. I had nothing to do with it until they offered me the role of Grumpy Cat's voice because Jane, what's her name? Who's Jane, you know, from Glee? Jane.
Anybody can type it in if they know it.
Lynch.
Lynch.
Jane
Okay.
Lynch. Oh, Jane Lynch. Oh, Jane Lynch. Yeah.
Jane Lynch was the voice of Grumpy Cat, but then she saw the Lifetime movie and was like, I mean, I don't know, I'm putting these words in her mouth, but the movie was, and anyway, so the way that I approached this was like, I had this kind of idea to do kind of like a witch curse movie, but I also wanted it to be like this kind of like meta commentary on me and Grumpy Cat, and the idea just basically came out of the idea of like, because when I did the press tour with Grumpy Cat for the Lifetime movie, you know, I was on talk shows with this cat who was like peeing on me and like, you know, like backstage, and I'm with this cat. I did an entire day of promos with the cat, and I actually demanded Lifetime that I would only do promos if they would let me write them myself. So we shot these like David Lynch style like promos. They aired on Lifetime. Like no one watched this. Where it's like just like slow tracking shots into like me like holding Grumpy Cat dressed as like the Virgin Mary, like truly disturbing imagery. And so basically I was like, what if there's an idea where it's like, I'm me, Grumpy Cat's Grumpy Cat. We go on the Today Show, but then like a magical like Halloween curse happens and we swap bodies, and so then I get trapped inside of Grumpy Cat and then I actually become my character from the movie. That was my like idea, and then it just kind of like spun out from there. And I don't think anyone's ever gonna let me make it, so I don't know
Oh, I don't know about that. And so then when you brought the idea to your partner, did you start outlining it together? Did you
started outlining it? We started outlining it. We went through, we had a lot of stuff that we were trying to pack into this script, but we kind of made a treatment. We just kept kind of working at that, and then eventually we just got into a groove where he would take a stab at some scenes and then I would take a stab at some scenes, and then we would kind of revise, and it was really honestly, I think, just about like barfing it out. It was just like, if we can just get anything on the page, then we can just like go through and be like, this is how we make this good. Like we were never concerned about it being good when we first started, because we just knew that it was so many balls trying to keep in the air that like we just needed to be like, interior gas station, Grumpy Cat like pees on in the ground and something, and then like move on, just get it, you know what I mean, just get it down, and then you go back, and then the real writing, I feel like, comes later when you're like, okay, I know that this is gonna work, now I just have to make this good. And we're still doing that. We got notes from a really good friend recently on our second draft, and so we're still writing it. But.
Yeah. Writing is rewriting, and that's what you just said is so great and so valuable, is that if we can dull the voice of the self-censor, so we get out of our own way, don't worry about it, just get it, just make it happen, just put it there, and then you make it good. It's exactly right.
Yeah. Just get it down. Don't be so precious about it, because you'll never do it.
Exactly. We've got a question from Sasha Chowdhury. Sasha, still there?
Yeah. So I just have a question. So I feel like auditions nowadays have been very intimidating
just in general. A lot of the times it's about your physical appearance and your race. And being a filmmaker, I feel like I'm already behind. So I was just wondering, like, how you navigated that era as a filmmaker, and what are the opportunities and connections that really like led to your first like big break, like Funny People or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was like that when I was auditioning too, and I think that the thing that helped me was just generating my own material. And like I said like before, like the SNL at home stuff is basically the same stuff that we were doing, you know, years ago, like going out and shooting a web series or shooting a, you know, just shooting anything and generating anything on your own, I think is the only way that you can kind of like get out of that first level, because it's really hard, and a lot of times it just feels overwhelming, like you're just constantly kind of being compared to other people or something. But I think it's like those moments when you're able to kind of like do something and be like, this is me, and people see it, it's like they can't compare you to anything because you're you. So I think it's really just about kind of almost trying to sell yourself in a way, not in like a gross way, but just kind of like using your strengths and using your kind of vibe to be like, this is me, like, and then kind of go from there. That was my experience, and like I found that was really just being able to send a link to a sketch that I did, or you know, anything, just being like, here, you know, self-generation is key.
Well, this is a really good segue to a question that Bernie has been wanting to ask for a while, which is, what's the best advice you would give us as we are literally days away from graduating, either in life or in the entertainment field? And P.S., I'm a huge fan. Thank you for doing this, says Bernie.
Wait, sorry, can you say that one more time, Mike?
Yeah. So this is a question from Bernie on the chat. And Bernie, and it's sort of segues to what you were just talking about.
Okay.
What is the best advice you would give us as we are literally days away from graduating, either in life or in the entertainment field? And P.S., I'm a huge fan. Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Well, I would say that my advice will be very contradictory. Like, I would say in life, in this moment, I mean, I would advise to just not put too much pressure on yourselves, you know, just in life. Like right now, I feel like is a really kind of chaotic time, and it's a really interesting time to think about productivity and kind of things like that. And I think there's something to be said about just, you know, slowing down right now and kind of being really observant of the world around you, and just really experiencing this time, and not, you know, and really living it however messed up it is. Because I have this kind of feeling right now too, where I'm just like, you know, I should be writing the next great, I should be making the next great piece of whatever. Like, I have all this time, like, why am I not? But I don't think that's what anyone needs. I think if you're inspired to do something, great. But I would say, just as a person, you know, take care of yourself, and just, yeah, observe the world. But entertainment wise, I mean, I feel like I said before, like it's going to be such an interesting time for small stories, intimate, you know, stories and movies and projects. Like, I think that it would be silly not to try and figure out how to make things on your own right now, wherever you are. Just engaging in different ways of storytelling, because I think we're all going to have to be creative about how we do that. And I've been thinking a lot about that. I don't necessarily always, I don't shoot things like but even I've been thinking about that. And I think always that's key. It's just, yeah, kind of trying to be in touch with your own like creative source and kind of understanding like how like what you have to say and how you want to say it, I guess.
That's great. Victor Diaz has a question. Is Victor still with us?
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for doing this, Aubrey. Really appreciate it. I think I can speak for everyone here. Thanks for taking the time. I was wondering, you've been in a lot of different spaces. I mean, obviously as a Tisch graduate and then, you know, doing comedy and acting and now producing. What would you say has been the most unexpected lesson or lessons that you've had in your time?
Unexpected lessons? Oh no. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't know how unexpected this is, but I guess like one thing that I always come back to is like I never I think a lot of people forget that just how you are as a person like on a set and how you kind of like conduct yourself is so is so important for like the longevity of your career. Like I find that like this is something that maybe like not a lot of people get until like later in life or something, but there's so many like directors or actors or crew members that like if their egos are like too big and if they're too kind of like I don't know, like not um really like respecting every person on set and every job and how little it may seem or whatever, it's like that ends up not working out most of the time for them. And I think that I've just met so many incredible people that I've worked with, PAs and ADs and all kinds of people, and I'm always so like taken by how like the people that seem to end up being the most successful like usually are the people that people just want to be around, like people that are just like bringing this energy in a way that like is that people like and gravitate towards, because I think the thing about movies and about making these things is like it is really hard work, and like you really affect people's day. You all affect each other in that way. So I think there's like something to be said about just yeah, like keeping that in mind, I guess. Like that was the lesson that I always learned, because it's really easy to get distracted by all the stuff, especially when you're an actor, to be like, oh, I'm like whatever it is, fame or whatever it is. But it's like ultimately, yeah, I feel like if you treat people right and like people will want to keep working with you, and it's something that I feel like people are learning over and over again.
And I hope that's also something that people learned at UGF-TV, and that your own experience here working in crews is you saw that in action. You saw the students who easily got crews and support and the ones who didn't. And you saw these are the people you're going to carry forth and have relationships and work with again and again. I mean, Aubrey, case in point of the friendships she made at UGF-TV lifted her up, and you carry and still in your world. So here's a question. I'm going back and forth between those that are written on chat and the hand raised. This is from Wade Kushner, who says, so I have a deep admiration for Goofy Awards bits, and I love what you've done with Spirit Awards. I was wondering what the process was with getting attached to that gig, and how much creative freedom were you given?
So they just offered that to me out of nowhere. I was not expecting that at all. 2 years ago at all. Like I had never really hosted anything. So I think maybe, yeah, because I had won Angry Goes West the year before that. I guess I was on their radar, and they offered it to me, and I just couldn't turn it down. It wasn't like a career move for me. It's not something, I'm not trying to like be a host, although I have been told that I could be, but I don't know if anyone wants to see that. But I really just like love movies so much that I was like, I genuinely like would love, and it was such a crazy time for film. So I was like, it's just too much to pass up. Like I just love the idea of like celebrating films and being able to say what I wanted to say. And creative freedom wise, I had complete creative freedom. That was the scariest part about it, was there, I mean, it's not the Oscars, so, you know, they're a little more lax, and they're kind of like a little bit old school, where they're like, it's a, you know, whatever you want to do, literally whatever you want to do, whoever you want to hire, whatever you want to do. I mean, within reason, because they had no money, and that was always an issue. But it's a nonprofit, you know, organization, and they don't have any money, so they're like basically like whatever you want to do. So it was super scary, and I had no idea what I was doing. But luckily, I had built this community from New York of like people that, I mean, actually people, yeah, people, writers, comedians that I had worked with at UCB, and then filmmakers who came in and kind of made my my opening film, which was like something that hadn't really happened before. I was treating these shoots like they were films, and basically shooting like $30,000 like SNL sketches, or whatever you want to call them, 3-minute shorts or whatever. But I was shooting them, you know, on anamorphic lenses and stuff. So, and they were like, I'm sorry, what did you need? And I'm like, an anamorphic lens, you know, and they're like, we don't like, so, it was the process was all about collaboration, just like getting together all the people, the talented people that could pull this off, and being like, you're not going to get paid a lot of money, but John Hamm will be there. Bill Murray, Michael Shannon, I mean, Sharon Stone. We got some crazy people in those videos.
Yeah, it's really great. We got a question from Nikki Mansouri. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is more about going into the development process as a producer. You spoke about your process as an actor, but what do you look for in a script when you want to produce something, whether or not you want to be in it or not?
I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, I would say I'm mostly producing things that I'm in right now at the moment, but I would say like eventually I want to produce things that I'm not into, and just really, you know, promote filmmakers and storytellers that I really like. So I would say anything that kind of like falls in line with my, like the kinds of things that I want to put out into the world. Because I haven't directed yet, but I can say that it's the same feeling, where it's like there was this one script that I almost directed that was kind of offered to me, and I was already attached to that script as an actor, and I was set to be in it as an actor. But then they said, well, how about directing it? And so then I was like, that's interesting. So then I read the script again, but thinking as a director, and I realized like, oh, I don't want to do this. This isn't like the story that I need to tell. Like, it was just interesting to me because I never thought about it like that. Because once I thought like, oh, but this is going to be like in my life for a year, like this will be like my baby, like whatever I'm going to direct or produce has to be something that I really, really care about, because it's just so time consuming, and you're just constantly on phone calls, and you're constantly trying to convince people to do things for you. And so you really, for me, it's like I have to be passionate about it, or it's not worth it, because it's just so much work.
And years of your life too.
Years. And it's just people I want to work with mostly,
Yeah.
is what it comes down.
So here's a question from Basil or Basil, I'm not sure. What advice do you wish someone had given you when you were just starting out? If you could meet the young Aubrey at age 24 now, what would you say?
I would say, I guess I would say just make things. Like, don't wait. Like, don't wait for anyone. Like, and I think I did an okay job at that, but I would say like, even looking back now, I'm like, oh yeah, like the people, like you can make movies. Like you can make movies. You can figure out how to make movies. Like don't wait for the perfect situation, or or anything. I think it's really just like you do it once and then you learn, and then you do it again and you learn, and you just keep getting better and better. So the earlier you can start, the better, I think.
Great. Nathaniel Stevens, you've got a question?
Yeah. Hey, Aubrey, big fan here. I'm curious, given that you worked on, Parks and Rec and so many other shows that are now very iconic in TV and film as well. What do you think makes a compelling character, specifically in a TV show, someone that we can watch for seasons and seasons and not get sick of? And then, as well, from your perspective, I guess, what gives you the motivation to keep playing that character?
Well, I mean, complexity, like I always want to play characters that are multi-dimensional, that don't feel one note or don't feel like you've seen it before. And I'm always interested in, trying to dig a little bit deeper. And, like Ingrid Goes West, for example, it's like that script, when I first read it, it's like Ingrid was crazy. There was no kind of information about what exactly is mentally kind of going on with this character. Like, why is she behaving this way? Why is she doing these things? And that stuff is always interesting to me. If there's a way to dive into these things and make really strong choices, if there's an opportunity for that, then I'm like really into those kinds of characters. And I think just like, I only have myself as my instrument or whatever. So I'm always interested in, doing things that I haven't done before that feel really different physically or anything. And then I think just in terms of like how characters evolve and like keeping my interests and stuff, like I think on television, it's like, I think April Ludgate is kind of an example of a character that I feel, I mean, I don't know, it's hard for me to have perspective on that, but I feel like she evolved subtly in her own way throughout the series. Like she grew up, I mean, like she's still her, but there were things that kind of would happen that would kind of add a different color, different layer or something. And I think it's really just about making choices. And I think a lot of times on television, especially on like network television, it's like you could just be doing the same thing over and over again if you don't care. Like you can kind of just, or you can kind of like try to push it and try to, have the character evolve, which I think is always more interesting, and kind of, I think people respond to that whether they realize it or not.
So here's a question from Nico Trusk, who says, here's a weirder question. Did you get that cameo as an NBC Paige in 30 Rock because you were already Paige?
Yes, because so basically what was happening was, so I was also an intern. I helped cast the 30 Rock pilot. I was an intern working for Jen McNamara's office, and they were casting that pilot. Wait, was that before? Anyway, the basically the story is that I kept saying, I knew some people because I had interned at SNL that were also working on the 30 Rock pilot in the crew, namely the set designer. And I kept saying to him like, hey, like, I have my Paige uniform because I stole it. Because I kept it, so I was like, I have it still in my apartment, so you don't even have to like put a costume on this person. Like I can just put my uniform on, and like I even know what to say because I was a Paige. I was like, I know the speech when you get on the 8th floor, what you say about the Conan O'Brien studio or whatever. And the director, all they needed was just like a Paige to be giving a tour in the background while like Jack McBrayer runs through. And so I was just like very aggressive about it. And I was just like, I'm just gonna do this, and like I'm just gonna wear this thing, and like I'll just say this thing, but then I would always say more than I like was supposed to, I guess. So much so that they Taft-Hartley'd me into the union. That's how I got my SAG card, is when I
That's
was on 30 Rock. That was my way into the union because I said enough words that they like had to pay me, or they had to make me a union member.
it's
And
genius.
so
Absolutely genius.
I was really obnoxious.
Charles Lee, got a question.
Hi, again, big fan. I just wanted to ask you about, did you face any challenges with being typecasted? And if you did, like how'd you dealing with that?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think I think everyone always faces that challenge because it's so hard. If you do one thing and it's successful or memorable or whatever it is, like it's hard for people to see you any other way. So, and I think right off the gate, I think I came out in Funny People and Parks and Rec and Scott Pilgrim. I got all three of those things in 1 week, which was insane. And like literally in I didn't know it at the end of the week, but 1 week of being in LA, I had all three of those meetings, and I ended up getting all of them. And there was a web series that I had done that was the thing that had got me the original audition for Funny People, which was called The Jeannie Tate Show, which was a YouTube show on YouTube that was written by Bill Hader's former wife, Maggie Carey, and Liz Kukowski was an SNL writer. Bill Hader was on it. Anyway, I was like 19 or whatever when I was in that, but I play like this kind of like delinquent like teenager that's like kind of like rolling her eyes, and it's like a kind of like teenage version of April Ludgate. And so it was like this persona that I like kind of had, but it wasn't like the only thing that I was doing. But I ended up I'm rambling, but basically that was like the first thing people saw me do. And so I think everyone just thought like, oh, this is like the deadpan actress or something. And so for a long time, I was always like I still am fighting that. I mean, it's like, all I want to do is, be someone that people feel like could do anything, but it's hard because people see you do one thing and they always want to see you do it over and over again.
Well, I think Black Bear is really going to establish you in a different way in people's minds. I mean, it's a tour de force performance.
Dirty Grandpa didn't do it for you? I mean, what can I do?
We got a question from exactly. What can we say? Maddie Shoemaker, you got a question?
Yes, hi. My question was, is there anything in your producing that like you're hoping to improve upon, or like something that you did in Black Bear that you might do differently moving forward?
I mean, Black Bear was like such a crazy experience. Like, I think we all just did the best we could in that situation. Like, we were just flying by the seat of our pants, just trying to anticipate whatever problems could happen. But I would say, I don't know, it's hard for me to think of like specifically like I would do this next time, but I think that I just need to always remember to follow my instincts about people and about anything. Like, I think that's really what it comes down to as a producer. A lot of times it's like you're kind of hoping that all of these puzzle pieces are going to come together and like work out, and like a lot of times you have to really kind of take risks. And so I think it's about that. Was there another part of the question I'm like forgetting?
That's okay. Part of it was like, is there anything you're hoping to improve upon in producing, like moving forward, like any area that you find you want to know more about?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm producing a movie for Mike White that I'm going to be doing with Mike White. And it's a movie that he wrote that he's going to direct, and the two of us are starring in it. And we were supposed to be prepping now and shooting in Finland in June. So now obviously we're we are figuring that out, figuring out what we're gonna do. But I would say like this process has been really helpful for me because I'm learning a lot about kind of, I guess, kind of like the boring stuff like insurance and all of these other things. I don't, these are the kinds of things that I don't know enough about. And I would say if there's anything that I can improve on, it's really just taking the time to educate myself about, policies and tax rebates and all of these things, because that's the thing that sets me apart from these other people. And like, I had to like, muscle my way into these conference calls sometimes, because a lot of times when you're an actor, especially, and you say, I want a producing credit, and I'm not going to make it about gender, but I would say a lot of times when you're a woman too, it's a little bit more so like that, where it's like people might not assume that that you mean it, and you want to go, I'm not just, this isn't a vanity like credit. I want to be involved. I want to learn. And the only way I can learn is by experiencing it. I don't want to sit back and just be like, well, let the men decide, and then they come and tell me what we're doing or whatever. So that's what I'm trying to improve on, is just to go like, if I don't understand this rebate thing or this thing or whatever, I'm just going to like, try to understand what all these things mean, so that every project I do, I can, be able to anticipate problems and be able to, make good decisions and not have to leave it to someone else, I guess.
Do we have time for 2 more questions, and then I think we'll wrap it up? We've got a question here from Francis Acevedo. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Francis. What do you think your biggest weakness is career-wise, and how do you make your biggest weakness work for you, given that we are all humans?
My weakness, so many weaknesses. Career-wise, I don't know. That's like an interesting question. I mean, I think I think sometimes I don't put myself out there still in ways that I think that I could. I think also like, I mean, for me, I I feel like I sometimes, you know, having to do like publicity and like being in the public eye or whatever, and all of that stuff that kind of comes along with being an actor and making movies is always something that I struggle with. And I think like maybe one of my weaknesses is just kind of like, dealing with that part in the right way, and just kind of like realizing like, well, this is just like, this is a part that like comes along with it, because I don't necessarily like make things for that reason. But I guess, and so I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people that I really admire that kind of don't get wrapped up in that stuff and don't care what other people think about what they're doing. And I think that's a constant kind of thing that I always want to keep in mind, because I always want to, it's like I want to, people like John C. Reilly, or people like, I don't know, there's like people that I look up to that I'm always like, well, how do they like make decisions? And a lot of them are just they're just very confident in what they want to do, and they don't try to like play the game or do things they don't want to do. I don't know. So I guess my weakness is just like, like kind of trusting my own instincts, and kind of like, not listening to like, what everyone else is doing, just kind of doing what I want to do unapologetically or something.
That's a good answer. It's a good answer. And the last question comes from Eden Ashkenazi. Eden, are you still there?
Hello. Hi. So my question is, as a actress, when you do take after take in film, how do you keep your imagination working, and bring something new every single time?
Oh my God, that's like the hardest part of it for me. It's like, it's it's so exhausting to do things over and over again, especially coming from like an improv background, because I have such a, like, it's the same thing with like talk shows where it's like anything that feels kind of like staged or like performative or something, or planned, like it just like gives me like the heebie-jeebies. Like, so I think it's just kind of like two things, like turning your brain off, because there's so many times that you just get caught in your own head, and you're just like, you want so desperately to control what you're doing. But I think almost like the more zen state that you can be in is better, and just allows you to like be more present and to listen. I think just listening and to the other people in a scene, or just to your surroundings or whatever it is, and just trying to like keep present, I think is like kind of, and turning your brain off really, because it doesn't really help you in the end. It's like, it's kind of a matter of just like preparing, like over preparing, but then when you're in the moment, letting it all go out the window. It's like the balance of that, because yeah, otherwise you just kind of like miss like real moments. And I think it's like not being afraid to fail too is one thing too, because if you're so kind of determined to do something perfectly, it's just never going to happen. And stamina, I mean, I don't know, it's all about energy conservation, and like, it's like you got to do what you got to do. And if you got to like, do 10 jumping jacks, and like, like run around, scream or whatever, and that's what you got to do, you got to do it, and you got to do it. Like, it's all about commitment.
Aubrey, this has been incredible. You've been remarkably generous and given us so much insight and so much of your time and spirit, and it's tremendous. I would like to ask everybody to unmute yourselves so that we can give a big round of applause and a heartfult thank you.
Oh.
So unmute yourself. Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aubrey.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Congratulations on almost finishing.
Yeah. Right. And how about a round of applause to all of you for graduating? Yay, all of us! Woo! Class of 2020.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tell people about Black Bear if you like to tweet about it, whatever.
Oh, yes, it's very important.
Yeah.
Support Black Bear. Definitely. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.